Okay, so I have set up and played with Affliction, and now I kind of wanted to go over some of the talents and abilities and all of that. So I am in Tolbard on my white raptor, which finally dropped from the Arathi Highlands Warfront. So, as with destruction, I didn't have to play around too long to kind of know whether things were kind of working as they should or if I needed to make changes. So, I did play a few levels. I think I was 65 um, when I did the video for destruction. So I'm 68 now. So done some dungeons, some PvP. Not a lot, but enough that I can kind of tell that things are working as they should. So Affliction is a bit overpowered, overtuned. I'm not sure which one kind of which one whichever you prefer. Um, and as I said with destruction, the talents were really good. So I think Warlock might have some of the better talent choices, designs um, in the game right now. So I'm going to do what I've done in kind of the two parts. This would be like the simplified overview or the overview of certain talents and abilities. And then the second part will be me resetting the talents. And then I'm going to stay with focusing on like the main abilities. I like that. That seems to work instead of just kind of going over all the talents again. Um, so Affliction wanted more of a kind of unstable affliction, agony kind of setup, and I didn't want to go like full on one way or the other because in PvP, which is kind of typically what I do the most on my Warlock, that was my intention in wanting to level my Warlock was to maybe do some PvP at some point. Um, it's typically more kind of um, AOE damage, AOE focus, so you don't really get to use a lot of like the single target rotation. Um, so I did take a few things. So focusing on the main abilities, um, they would be pretty much unstable affliction, agony, and corruption. So, so the rotation, um, before I get too far ahead of myself here. So, depending on what you're wanting to do, whether it's single target damage or AoE damage, there's a couple different ways you can start. If you want AoE damage, which is kind of your optional opener, situational opener, um, you would just use either um, Phantom Sigillary or Seeds of Corruption. There really is no right or wrong way to use these. Whether you use Seeds of Corruption first, the main difference between them um, basically boils down to Seed of Corruption has a delay before it um, goes off and then puts corruption on targets within 15 yards? 10 yards. Whereas Phantom Sigillary does damage to targets within 15 yards. So, just really kind of depends on the target that you're trying to put one of them on and or do AoE damage. So, um, if it's in a PvP setting, if you're um, if you're trying to put it on a player that has players around them already, then of course Singularity was probably the one you want to use first. If it's you're trying to put it on someone who's running into um, will be running into other players of their team, then Seed of Corruption. As I said, there's really no difference. It's just one does damage immediately, one has a delay. Really not much else. They do different things. Um, Singularity, of course, does damage. A Seed of Corruption just ends up putting your corruption curse on other players. Aside from that, um, otherwise, aside from these two, your rotation's pretty much the same. So I have these arranged in order of their uptime. So Unstable Affliction lasts for 21 seconds. Agony lasts for 18 seconds, and Corruption lasts for 14 seconds. So these are your main abilities, as I said right there. And then Drain Soul is pretty much kind of a filler ability, unless you're kind of in a one-on-one situation, and then you're going to want to use it because it's going to make your it increases your damage. It also seems to speed up your damage over time effects. Um, that was kind of always what it did before. It seems to do vaguely the same thing now from when I've used it. And then from there, it's just kind of an optional thing. You don't really want to use Singularity or Seeds of Corruption kind of after the fact. Um, at least, again, kind of in a PvP setting, because I find they don't tend to work all that well. So what I've been doing is trying to get at least the single target curses out, if not the AoE, and then use Malfic Rupture, which just increases the damage that um, your curses are doing, basically. So it is kind of not quite a burst damage, but it will definitely increase your damage when you use it. It does cost a soul shard, which is my biggest complaint, I would say, is you do seem to have trouble generating soul shards. Now, to counter that, do you need to be generating a lot of soul shards? Well, that is a situational question. Um, because you can end up burning an opponent down quick enough where it's really not that big of a deal. It just kind of depends on your situation, really. Um, if nothing else, you can just reapply your curses, and then just, as I said, just keep using Drain Soul as kind of your filler ability. So there's not really an easy fix to that I found so far. Um, it's just either you generate a soul shard or you don't. And I have talents that do generate soul shards. So um, if we look, what is it? Soul shard. Yeah, it is soul shard. Configure if it is soul shard or soul fragment. Yeah. So there's mainly soul conduct. Every soul shard you spend has a 10% chance to be refunded. That may be the one thing destruction does better than um, Affliction is it does have a few more abilities to generate um, soul shards. On the bright side, most everything costs mana. So the only thing you really need it for is Seed of Corruption and Rapture. So, on the bright side. However, these two can be extremely useful. Again, depending on what situation you're in. Um, so, with that being said, um, yeah, yeah. So, with that being said, so if we look at unstable affliction first, so as I said, there was kind of a build for that. So, the affliction talent, the left side was more your single target abilities. The right side was more kind of AoE focused, your AoE abilities. So that's where you get Seed of Corruption. You have a choice here. Um, so I took Phantom Sigillary, of course, because I've always taken this as far back as I can remember. It works really well. Um, so as far as the abilities I did take, so you have to take Unstable Affliction. That is one of your first abilities as you're working down the tree. And then some of these I remember, like in the middle, towards as I was working towards the bottom, I just kind of took just to use um, the talent point. Um, so Rupture deals 30% increased damage to targets suffering from unstable affliction. Your agony, corruption, siphon life, and unstable affliction deal damage 15% faster. Um, Unstable affliction deals 30% increased damage. And then this one I actually really like. I wasn't sure when I took it, but this one actually is kind of actually seems to kind of work well. When Seed of Corruption deals damage to a target suffering from your unstable affliction, they explode, dealing shadow damage to all enemies within 10 yards. So I've done um, PvP where like I really didn't do that much, but because of the dots and the kind of the AoE and all of that, I actually was one of the higher DPS in there. I was leveling, so take that for what you will. Um, I was um, I was impressed though. That was one of the first things that I realized. Like this is a pretty solid build. I feel like if you've played Warlock, you kind of take the things you know are going to work or the things you know you're going to need depending on what you're doing. Um, so there's not really much I would change or tweak at this point. Um, and then if we look at Agony, um, so as I said, a few different things work with Agony. There might be some overlap here. So Agony's damage increased by 15%. Um, Agony's damage starts at 4 stacks and may now ramp up to 18. So again, useful in PvP. Seed of Corruption's explosion causes stack count of Agony. Increases the stack count of Agony by 2 on all targets hit. Um, we already went over that one. So yeah, so there's a few things I didn't take. Um, as I said, didn't want to completely build around kind of one thing. So I took a few things for Unstable Affliction, Agony. That seems to work perfectly fine. Unstable Affliction does have a limit of 1. Agony and Corruption can be cast on multiple targets. Um, so then if we look at Corruption, uh, so the one thing I did want to point out was absolute Corruption. Corruption is now permanent and deals 15% increased damage. Duration reduced to 24 seconds against players. So this is a really good ability to take for PvP. I had to take it over Siphon Life. Depending on what you were doing, if you find that you need extra healing, I would say take Siphon Life. You can probably do without the permanent effect of Absolute Corruption. Um, and these are this is an example of talents that are well designed because they do different things. However, they balance each other out really well. So it's basically just a difference of an effect. You can either have the permanent effect, the increased damage, and the reduced duration. Or you can get a different damage over time effect that will heal you. So it's they're different, but they balance each other out. It's just a difference of effect, really. Um, Both of them are going to do some sort of damage over time. It's just a difference of is it going to be a permanent damage over time or is it going to be a damage over time that heals you. So that is a really good example of how to design talents. Aside from that, so of course, Seed of Corruption now embeds demon seeds into 2 additional nearby enemies. Seed of Corruption's explosion increases the stack count of agony, so we already went over that. Rapture and Seeds of Corruption damage deal an additional 8% damage. Yeah. And then, so as always, there's a bit of overlap. Corruption damage has a chance to cause your next Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul to deal 25% increased damage. Shadow Bolt instant cast, drain life, channels 50% faster when affected. So I don't use Shadow Bolt. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, so there's really no point. The effect for Drain Soul is really good though. So because you have to remember while you're channeling this, your dots are still ticking. So it's nice to be able to have that. And this is supposed to generate a soul shard if the target dies. Excuse me. Yeah, see that's kind of the sometimes generates 1 soul shard. See, that's kind of the problem. I think it's too much. I seem to remember, and I could be completely wrong, that Drain Soul had a chance to generate a soul shard if you were able to um, complete channeling it. Um, I do remember there were more effective ways of generating soul shards than what there is now for Affliction. Um, because like doing the like Hollow's End is going on right now, so like doing the Headless Horseman thing, dungeon, doing the Headless Horseman dungeon. There's the one, basically the one boss. There's the mobs, but depending on who else is in your group, they end up burning them down so fast you can't really set up to generate a soul shard. And since you can only have unstable affliction on one target, you really don't want to be taking it off like the Headless Horseman anyway. That is your main um, target. So, as I said, generating soul shards is about the only criticism I have. And then, so in addition to, as I was saying, you want to get your dots out and then try to use Rapture as much as possible. Um, I came to the conclusion maybe saving one soul shard for Seed of Corruption, just to be able to use it if need be. Um, Other than that, that's pretty much it. Pretty much straightforward. I did want to mention, so I took Dark Pack, which sacrifices a percentage of your health to grant you a shield. You can take a passive that will reduce the amount of your health you sacrifice while still granting you the full um, effect of the shield and all of that. And this works really well. So I took it just kind of as a backup. So I have Unending Resolve, which is generally all you'll need. You do have health stones, and if nothing else, depending on what you're doing, you may or may not have a soul stone. So this actually works really well, though. This can grant you a few seconds if you're trying to um, apply an effect or just buy yourself a few more seconds. Dark Pack works really well for that on a 1 minute cooldown. So can't can't complain when during the few times I've used it. When I have used it, it really has been working well. I took Shadow. Uh, where is it? There we go. So I took Shadow Flame, which works not as well as I'd hoped. I was thinking it would work more along the lines of a Dragon's Breath that fire mages have. Um, it does slow targets by 70% for 6 seconds. So my thought, in addition to kind of how it would work, would be in a PvP setting. If you have a melee on you, you can use this, at least slow them, try to put some distance between you and them. Again, just to buy yourself some time for your dots to work. Um, I did take some things for Drain Life, if I remember correctly. Um, Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was for Destruction. I was gonna say Drain Life doesn't work all that well. It's kind of weird. I always thought it was a weird thing to have two channeled abilities with Drain Soul and Drain Life. And Drain Life for a short time, if I remember correctly, was a demonology ability. It had nothing to do with affliction or destruction. Um, I don't use my Curse of Weakness. I'm a bad warlock. Um, and then Dark Glare, which you can take, will do basically does damage based on how many of your um, damage over time effect you have on the targets. So if you need a bit of extra damage, this would be probably what you would want to take. Bearing in mind, you'll probably have some sort of demon out. So in PvP, you'll probably have a succubus out. So if she can stun the target or otherwise keep them preoccupied, then you can pretty much just throw out everything you have, and then just hope to burn them down. Which I feel like if you were max level and fully geared wouldn't be much of a problem with what I'm doing now. Um, and yeah, I took Fail Domination, which reduces the cast time to summon a demon by 90% on a 2 minute cooldown. This used to take a soul shard, They did away with that, so I was glad to see that. This was one that I took. It's kind of helpful. It has kind of a niche use um, for what it does, but you can be in some situations where that reduced cast time is really important. And then aside from that, I just took Burning Rush just to use my talent point. I'm not used to not having some sort of um, kind of movement ability, utility. So, and then aside from that, so as far as like CC, I took Howl of Terror. I've never really found Mortal Coil all that useful. It's a single target ability. Again, it heals you. So if you feel like you need some extra healing, this would work well with your other abilities quite nicely. I know there are warlocks that do use this um, and do use it very efficiently. I just prefer Howl of Terror. So being a clothy and a caster, I'm used to having something that kind of some sort of CC to keep either mobs or players off me. So that was the other reason why I took Shadow Fury too. I'm horrible at using this because it has a cast time on a 1 minute cooldown. I'm getting better though. There's more abilities in the game that are kind of target on location. So I'm getting better at using these. So it doesn't hurt to have more than one. Um, in PvP, things can move quickly depending on what kind of a map you're on. So you may not always have time for everything to reset necessarily. Um, thinking thinking of what all else as far as like utility I took. So I took my so demonic gateway and I thought I had to take demonic circle. Maybe not. Maybe it was just demonic gateway. Oh, there we go. You get demonic circle by default. Um, yeah, so I took both of those. Uh, Grimoire of Synergy. Damage done by your demon has a 10% chance to grant the other one 10% increased damage for 15 seconds. Um, haven't been always using a demon. Sometimes I have, sometimes I haven't. Just kind of depends. Um, or again, like fail domination is good if you don't think you're going to need one. Like I just did a toll bard before I was doing this, and um, there was three of us, at least three of us at one point, and we were fine. And then I went to go wait by the raid because we controlled toll bard. So I said, well, I want to do the raid. So I went and was waiting in front of the raid for toll bard to be over, and then there was another horde that came in kind of out of nowhere. So then um, kind of chased him around and then needed my succubus to try to. It was a druid tank, so it was a bear, which are horrible in PvP to try to kill. So needed my succubus. So things like fail domination in those situations tend to work well. It just helped to get my demon out quicker, or vice versa. If you already have a demon out, you can use it if you need like a void walker real quick, something like that. I mean, there are niche uses for it. So, um, and I think that's it. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward, fairly simple kind of build. I probably have more abilities with Warlock than perhaps, at least that I use almost during every fight than I do on any other class, because they all do something different. You have your single target damage over time, you have kind of your AoE, you have an enhancement ability, you have a channeled ability, which you can use kind of as part of your rotation or as a filler, either or. Um, so, yeah. Um, Played Affliction quite a bit over the different expansions. I like Affliction, even though it is more of a straightforward kind of ability. Once you get used to the dots and everything, it's kind of the counterpart to Resto Druids that rely on healing over time. Affliction Warlocks rely on damage over time, so you got to get used to waiting for things to run their duration. If you're used to using an ability and then having it immediately do something, it it can be a bit of a change to have to wait for the full duration, especially for some of the curses to actually like ramp up and do more damage the longer they're on the target. You don't want to keep reapplying them, which can be habit forming to do as part of a rotation. So, yeah. So there you go. There was a simplified overview of Affliction Warlock, and as I said, if you're curious how I came to use or if you're curious how I came to choose the talents that I'm currently using, that will be part two. Okay, so I decided to switch over to Affliction to see where it was at, if I had done anything on it yet in Dragonflight, and I don't think I did, because this is what it looked like when I switched over. So, um, going to go ahead and set the talent or reset the talent. So this is what it kind of gave me at some point here during Dragonflight. Um, so I will start with the Affliction talent. So this I think is new or is a kind of a revamped version of an ability we already had. So your periodic effects from your spells erupt on all targets, causing shadow damage per effect. So there was a similar effect to that got added in Shadowlands, I believe. So setting this up for PvP. Um, because at some point in time, that's probably what I'm going to be doing. Um, Starts at 4 stacks and ramps up to 18. That's fine. Corruption damage has a chance to conjure next. Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul to deal 25% increased damage. Shadow Bolt is instant cast. Drain life channels 50% faster when affected. Corruption damage has a chance to conjure next. Okay, so it's just like a proc chance. Um, Seed of Corruption's explosion increases the stack count of agony by 2 on all targets. I like that. Takes a while for it to ramp up anyway, so it's a slow damage over time. Deal 4% increased damage, 8% increased damage, Shadow Bolt, Drain Soul. Not going to go all that heavy on the whole Shadow Bolt, Drain Soul kind of setup here, because Drain Soul is your channeled ability. So this is usually pretty good on for Affliction. Um, I think this is. I think Demonology has this, but it used to be a baseline ability. Now it's been mostly Affliction for the last few expansions. So, um, Shadow Bolt I don't really use because it doesn't really do that all that much damage. So, Corruption is now permanent. Deals 50% increased damage. Duration reduced by 24 seconds against players. See, that is. Ooh, so you have to choose. Absolute Corruption or Siphon Soul. Siphon Soul will heal you for 30% of the damage that it does. I think Absolute Corruption is probably going to be a little bit better. Because that is. If you can really get your dots out for Affliction, you can usually do quite a bit of damage. And I have Health Stones and other things I can do for healing. So, and I think just what does I thought Drain Soul healed at one point, but you have Drain Life, so I could be mistaken. But I'm pretty sure there was at some point there was a talent that Drain Soul either restored health or it like put like a shield on you. I don't specifically remember. Okay, where are we here? So, Phantom Sigillary. Probably going to take that. That's a target location for shadow damage over 10 seconds. To 8 enemies within 10 yards. Applies agony and curse of exhaustion. So, curse of exhaustion. That's curse of weakness. So, what is. Do I have curse of. Curse of exhaustion. There we go. Reduces the target's movement speed by 50%. Curse of tongues. Increases the cast time of all spells by 30%. And Curse of Weakness increases the time between an enemy's attacks by 20% for 2 minutes. So, there we go. So, let's see here. Yeah. Phantom Sigillary is good because it will affect wherever the affected target is. So, usually really good in PvP. Corruption damage is increased by 7%, and each time it deals damage, any of your active curses on the target are extended by 0.2 seconds. When a target, when you kill a target, its soul bursts into flames, dealing shadow flame damage to nearby enemies. Deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. I like that. Soul swap. I've had it. I don't really use it. It's not difficult to apply your curses. So Grimoire of Sacrifice isn't going to help. I actually need my succubus out. So this would um, basically make me like a marksmanship hunter with Lone Wolf. So I'll do additional damage for in exchange for sacrificing my pet, basically. So a lot of people use this when it was first put in back during Warlords. Um, Nowadays, not so much. Occasionally, I'll see someone that has it. Um, Not so much anymore. So, okay. So I'm gonna have to take something. So Shadow Ball Drain Soul's damage is increased by 10%. Okay, fine. So I can take Drain Soul. Apply Shadow Embrace, increasing your damage dealt. Okay, don't really. Drain Soul, Shadow Embrace, increasing your damage dealt to the target by 1.5% for 16-second stacks of 3 times. Do I need that? I don't know if I need that. Refreshing Corruption, Agony, Unstable Affliction, or Siphon Life with less than 5 seconds remaining will deal shadow damage and has a chance to grant you a soul shard. Okay. Deals 50% increased damage to targets suffering from unstable affliction. Damaging an enemy with agony increases the duration, the damage dealt by your drain life. This effect stacks up 50 times. Well, that did not get me very far down the tree. So the left side appears to be more single target, and then the right side appears to be more kind of AoE focused. So, um, so I've kind of got a balance of the two. I mean, I guess that's fine. Almost always going to have stable infliction on the target, so that's probably good. Stable affliction deal damage, yes. Learn to kind of glance at the ones I don't take just to see if there's anything I might need to. Stable affliction deals 15% increased damage, 30%. Okay, and then Doom Blossom. When Seed of Corruption deals damage to a target suffering from your unstable affliction, they explode, dealing shadow damage to all enemies within 10 yards. Causes targets suffering from your unstable affliction to take 30% additional damage when your damage over time affects for 8 seconds. When Seed of Corruption deals damage, to a target suffering from your unstable affliction. Now that, so, okay, so the thing with Seeds of Corruption is, in a PvP setting, is you can put this on a target, and then as they're running around doing stuff, it will explode and put corruption on whoever they're near. Um, Whereas, like, Phantom Singularity just automatically starts doing damage, kind of pulses once you use it on a target. It just kind of starts doing damage every few seconds to whoever's around them. So, Seed of Corruption is something that you kind of use, or I kind of use by itself, because you're trying to get it on a target, um, as they're moving around, so they'll end up, around other, if they're in a skirmish, or if they're running like on a Warsong Gulch or a Rothi Basin, if they're running to, defend, or um, to get their flag, or to defend a base or something like that. So I don't often use this with other abilities. It also has a 2-second cast time, so it can be kind of tricky to actually cast. Hmm. So the question is, like, I like this. I like the idea of this. Could I get Seed of Corruption and Unstable Affliction on the same target enough to make this worthwhile? Because it does damage to all enemies, so a lot of stuff seems to want to use Unstable Affliction, which I'm fine with because it's one of the better um, abilities that Affliction has. Does it... So... Right, it does a bunch of damage over time. Got that. If Dispel does damage to the Dispeller and silences it for 4 seconds. Does this... She used to have a restriction that it could only be used on one target at a time. It doesn't say. I have to remember to kind of play with this and see if it does. While Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction are active, your Shadow Bolt has a 30% chance, and your Drained Soul has a 20% chance to make your next cost no soul shards and cast immediately. Okay. Haunt I've used. Haunt really doesn't do me much good. So, hmm. Corruption deals damage based on how many curses you have. I'm really bad at using curses. Shadow Ball Drain Soul deals 7% increased damage up to 21% damage over time. Per damage over time effect. Deal increased damage. Wow, it jumps from 7 to 15. So that's probably fine. Summon Dark Glare. So this does damage, if I remember correctly, based on the number of damage over time effects you have. Twisting Nether that extends the duration of your damage over time. Will serve for 20 seconds. Increased for every damage over time effect. Okay. Hmm. Nature damage. Interesting. Wither away all life force of your current target and up to 3 additional targets. nearby, causing your primary target to suffer nature damage. And secondary targets to suffer so half of the primary target's damage, still nature damage, over time. For the next 8 seconds, casting Drain Life will cause you to also drain life from any nearby afflicted by your soul rot. And Drain Life will not consume any mana. Interesting. Okay. So basically you either set everything up around Dark Glare or Soul Rot from here. And I don't really use Drain Life, so probably Dark Glare just to have just to have a bit of extra damage, as I remember it. No. Ah. Okay. Well, since there's 3, okay, that's what I'm going to do this time. There we go. And then, okay, so we're gonna lock this in. Then we're gonna reset this again. I think I remember what I took. Uh-huh. Yes. 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 Okay, what? Oh, didn't take Drain Soul. That would be kind of important. And then, yes. 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 And then, okay, took that. Took that. Okay, well, I took something I shouldn't have because now I can't get Dark Glare. So, what did I take that didn't take before? Hmm. Good question. So, remember I came down here, took this, Seed of Corruption damage. Yes, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine. Remember I came down here. Yeah. Was that it? Did I skip that? I might have skipped that one. That one seems like the one I would have skipped. Yeah. I will double check that and see if I made a mistake there. Okay, so we will apply those changes. I don't know why they changed this, so you can't like reset them separately. Okay, so Affliction is set. So now Warlock Talents. So You start out with Demonic Circle. Okay. Burning Rush, I don't really think I need. I'm taking the Fail Armor, the Demon Skin. Um, Fail Domination just really doesn't. It's nice. It's a nice kind of niche ability to play around with, but it doesn't really have a whole lot of a benefit. Although, that being said, I seem to remember it used to use a Soul Shard. I don't think it does now. I think it just has a longer cooldown. So it may. I'm going to leave this right now, and if I need to put a point into something, I will put it into that. So, Gateway increases all damage you take. Reduces all damage you take. So Howl of Terror. Just kind of setting these up how I remember they're set up for destruction. That's fine. Curses I don't really use. I don't really feel like I need all that. So the left side, from glancing at this, seems to be more kind of your pet abilities. And then kind of more your movement CCs, more kind of on the right side. And then kind of the middle and the right side are just kind of your utility abilities from what I can tell. So um, it increases the attack speed of your pet by 5%. More sacrifice. We're not using that. You and your pet's maximum health by 5. That's fine. I need one more point, so fail domination it is. Reduces the cooldown of fail domination by 30 seconds, by 60 seconds. Sure. Um, when you use Healthstone, you gain 15% leech. Again, goes from 7 to 15. These are some large increments here. I'll take it. Take Shadow Fury, just have something else besides Howl of Terror. Shadow Bolt drains all damage is increased. So I took Shadow Flame for destruction, and I've played around with it, and it's a bit of an odd ability. So I'm gonna take it and play around with it in a PvP setting. And don't if I still don't kind of care for it, if I come to the same conclusion, then I'll switch over to Dark Fury. Because having the reduced cooldown for a 3-second AoE stun is probably better. But I thought this would be good to kind of help keep like melee off of you. So I am a clothy, so some see me as an easy target. Although between Demonic Circle and Demonic Gateway, I mean, you kind of have more movement and some cloth classes do. So I did Toll Bard the other day on my priest and had a horrible time with a warrior. So um, okay, we need 6, and so that's curses. Your pet's attack increases the attack speed of your primary pet, and this increases damage of your... Okay. Well. So, increases... Well, in order to get Demonic Gateway, I need to take this. I do want Demonic Gateway. And then heals you for an additional 10% of your maximum health. Party and raid members using also heals you for that amount. So probably good to grab that. Drain life heals for 15% of the amount drained. Over. Okay. Dark Pack. Sacrifice 20% of your current health to shield you for 200% of the sacrificed amount, plus an additional. Usable while suffering from control impairing effects. So 20% of your health. This could be interesting. I'm going to grab that. Strength Wills is what I remember taking. Dark Pack sacrifices only 5% of your current health for the same shield value. Well, yeah, that's much better. Why wouldn't I do that? Soul Leech. Also, Soul Leech, which I believe is a passive. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. All single target damage done to you by your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorbs 3% of the damage dealt up to 15% maximum health. So, okay. Soul Leech also heals you for 50% and your pet for 50% of the absorbed. Okay. Agony damage is increased 50%. Okay. So again, kind of staying away from the whole Shadow Bolt, Drain Soul kind of thing. 10% of all damage you take is taken by your pet instead. Okay. And then this does a whole bunch of things that I've kind of ruled out already. Like I said, having gone through this with having gone through all this setting up destruction. Damage done by you or your demon has a chance to grant the other one 5% increased damage for 15 seconds. Damage done by you or your demon has a chance to grant the other one 5% increased damage. Okay. They deal 5% of your maximum health. Decrease unyielding resolves, which is your shield. Reduces damage by 25% and grants immunity from interrupt silence and pushback effects for 8 seconds. Cannot occur more than once every 25 seconds. So I know I took that Grimoire. Your spells and abilities have a chance to summon Inquisitor's Eye. That deal Shadow Flame damage. Okay. Summons a Soul Keeper that consumes all tormented souls you've collected. Blasting nearby enemies for chaos damage per soul consumed. Damage deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets and only one soul reaper can be active at a time. You collect tormented souls from each target you kill and occasionally escaped souls you previously collected. I'll take Grim Feast. You never know. Play around. I might, if it channels, the problem with Drain Life when I've tried to use it is a bit slow. So if it drains, channels 30% faster and restores health 30% faster, might make it a bit more, give it a bit more incentive to be used. Make it a bit more useful. 10% of all damage you take is taken by your pet instead. Sure. And then think, what was it? Soul Conduct? Is that what I put? You know what? I'm going to take this back. I'm going to put this into Soul Conduct so I can get the full 10% chance to get a Soul Shard back. So, yeah. So there we go. So I will set all this up. And as I said, kind of play around in PvP with this. I did want to look at there was Conjure a Rift at the target location, lasting 2 seconds. Enemy players within the rift, when it expires, are teleported to your demonic circle. Okay, so that's what I kind of wanted to play with that. So, what was, okay, so Oblivion, unleash wicked magic upon your target's soul, dealing shadow damage, increases damage increase 10% up to 30% per overtime effect you have on the target. Increases the range of your demonic gateway. Reduces the cast time every 30 seconds. Reduces the cast time between how often players can by 30 seconds. Okay. Unstable Affliction can now be applied to up to 3 targets. Okay, so going back to what I said, I thought there was a restriction on that. But its damage is reduced by 25%. Okay. Yeah, so I know I want Shadow Rift. Do I want Oblivion? Oblivion could be good. And then, okay, I don't need Observer. I'd like a passive ability if I could find one. Taking physical damage, just cooldown of demonic circle by 3% or 3 seconds. Cannot occur more than every 5 seconds. Physical damage, though. For the next 10 seconds, all of your damage over time effects occur 45% more often. Whenever you heal yourself with Drain Life, the enemy target deals 9% reduced damage. So, Drain Life, Drain Soul, and Oblivion. Damage increases the duration of your unstable affliction, corruption, agony, and siphon life on the target by 1 second. So, I'm going to go with Impish Instincts because I'm not entirely sure what else to take there. So, yeah. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.